So this is a book that I read recently. It's called Misbehaving, and he basically talks about the evolution of behavioral economics. And, an overview of what I'm going to present here. Fundamental premise of the book. What was this book about? Give you some examples. The book was chock full of examples of how people misbehave, and then I'm going to go into how it applies to trading and investing, and how this book impacted my own personal trading style, and of course the conclusion. Well, the fundamental premise is that he has a premise that there's a fallacy to various economic theories. They're wrong, and they don't understand human behavior. They don't take that into account. He devises various experiments to test out these hypotheses and to see what reality is. So he has his definition. He starts out in the book and he says there's a definition of people. You have humans. These humans have emotions. They have a history bias. They have limited time and brain power. And they use simple rules of thumb or heuristics and biases to basically guide them through the decision-making process. Econs, on the other hand, have no emotion, and they base all of their decisions on this no emotional mathematic analysis. It's kind of spotlight personality. So he started this out by, in his class, he had a test of his students, and he had a 100-point max on his test. Average score was 72. He had the grades greater than 80 was going to be an A, greater than 65 was going to be a B, and then less than 50 was going to be less than a C. Everybody came back, and the students hated it. They said the test was too hard. So he decided next time he'd use a 137-point basis. And although this test was slightly harder than the previous test, he found that the average score was 96, which was 70%, which is the same as what he had on the previous test. He graded on the same percentage curve. Everybody was happy. So the results, his results are all future tests were going to be based on a 137-point basis. And it's working to this day. Everybody works. Everybody enjoys the tests. They're hard, but they don't even know it. They're still got the 70% threshold. People don't think about these things. You get 100 on your test, you figure you're doing really, really good. Well, it's based on 137 points. So what's the difference between humans versus econ? This shows where the economic theories lie. This is economic theories, all the stuff that we learned in economics classes going through high school and college. Humans are they optimize based on heuristics. So they leave out many factors. For example, you go to a grocery store, it's just bewildering, the amount of things in a Vons supermarket. You've got all different choices. I stay to a very, very small group of things. I'm usually in the vegetable department. I go to the same vegetables all the time. I don't use the rest of the store. But, so for me, the optimization is a little different than some people. But some people looking at cans of soup, which can of soup? Should I go to Libby? Should I go to this or that one? So it's impossible. Also, you see humans celebrate gifts. They gifts at birthdays and anniversaries, and they purchase these gifts. Whether the person needs it, doesn't need it, you're trying to make a judgment for the person. So what does an econ do? How does an econ look at the same kind of decisions? He looks at all possible data, includes all the factors, finds the best possible selection. Even in the grocery store, they're going to find the best possible selection, including nutrition and cost and value and everything. And then they ask themselves, well, why would you want to ever give a gift because somebody got married, because somebody got born? This doesn't make any sense. It's just an event. It's not a big deal. And he said that the only reasonable gift is cash. That's because it's fungible. Fungible means you can do anything you want with it. You can buy anything you would like. You can buy a car, you can buy boat, you can buy whatever you want to buy. Pardon? And it flows real easily. So in essence, that should be the optimal gift, is the gift of cash. So credit card companies are misbehaving as well. They had a problem where they found out that to issue a credit card requires a 3% cost of usage. So they have a framing issue to it. So they said, okay, the cost of credit cards can be put into a surcharge. Credit card companies didn't like this. They said that you every time you make a purchase, you're going to add 3% if you want to use a credit card. So when you have something that's out of pocket, you see it and feel this. This is not something that credit cards wanted to see. So they said, well, what if we offered a discount? And this is what they prefer. So they said, we'll tack on a 3% discount onto the price yield curve, and people only see the price of credit card and not how much it actually costs them. So the credit card companies enlisted lobbyists, and they encouraged the regular price being the higher credit card price. I thought that was pretty good. And I try to, whenever I go in to negotiate a price, I'm usually saying, okay, if I give you cash, will you give me a discount? And most of the time they'll give me a discount. Yeah, but the thing is that the seller's just returning it through you. Yeah, they're passing it on the price of the goods. So if you buy something for $1, you could have actually bought it for 97 cents if you pay cash. Arco uses the gas pump price of cash versus credit card. Yeah. So what happens if gas prices fall 50%, which is exactly what we have today? So a person that was spending $80 a week is now down to paying $40 a week. Well, what does a human do with that $40 a week bonus? They use mental accounting. Now I can buy the good stuff. They get higher quality of gas, right? Firms, they use their gas the same way, it doesn't matter. No other goods, they found out that no other goods were purchased as a result of this for typical humans. And with the actual results, they actually found that there was a shift to higher grade gas by 14 times more people were buying the higher grade gas. What? What's that? This is measured. This was a measured result of the experiments. I agree. Anybody doing that has got to be stupid. But I have a friend who did that. I mean, he goes out, instead of buying he has to buy the premium, but there's a super premium. So when the prices went down, he went from premium to super premium.
It could be like 30% or 20%, but not
50 times greater people than expected executed this. No. So this is 14 times more people. So if we have all these people in this room, and if maybe 2 or 3 people did it before, then 14 times that, so you got 28 of the people in this room would be doing it. It's just the number of people doing it is more. So an econ, how does an econ handle the extra $40 a week? They use the calculator. They don't use mental accounting. They take more road trips, do more date nights, higher quality beer. Maybe they'll treat their car to 1 tank of higher grade gas. I wouldn't even do that. Makes no sense. So this is humans misbehaving. Doesn't go with economic theory. So I brought this up last week, or last time I was here. I don't know how many people remember it. You have a 1 mile long steel rails. This is 1 mile long, right? And it's anchored at the ends, and then the ends are fixed. You heat expands it by 1 inch. So you got 1 inch when it expands. So the question is, how high does the thing rise when it expands? Do many people remember the result? Okay. All right. So I can't really do this experiment not right now, but some people were saying like 2 inches or 3 inches, maybe a foot. You know, the real thing is 29.7 feet from a 1-inch increase in the length of the rails. So that A here, using Pythagorean theorem, going back to the calculator. One of the key concepts of the book was this value function. In this, he explains the gain-loss on the horizontal axis, where you have a $100 gain and you see how much people like the gain versus a $100 loss and how much they dislike the loss. In this case, it shows that people like gains, hate losses 2 times as much as they liked the equivalent gain. One realization that I had from this was that I really hate losses much more, more than 2 times more than gains. So now the next question is, you lose $30. Now you have a chance of a 50% gain of $9 or a 50% loss of $9. So you've lost. Or you can walk away. Which do you choose? So here's the one where you double up. Good point. So let's say you lost $30. Now you choose a 33% chance that you're going to gain the $30 back, or a 67% chance you're going to gain 0. So, or you can assure a $10 gain. So how many people would choose the first one, a 33% chance of the $30 gain, and a 67% chance? Nobody choose that one. Jim would do it. You do it. You do it. All right. Or a sure thing of $10. So if you figure out what the expectancy is here, the expectancy multiplied 33% times 30, 67% times 0. Turns out the expectancy is $10. So why gamble with it? It's $10. So what happens with the people when they did this experiment? They had, if you won $30, 70% chance would go and they would play with the house's money. 70% chance. 30% would no longer do nothing else. If they lost $30, now 40% would gamble, and 60% would just take it and walk away. And then when you lost $30, 60% chance said they would do the gamble, or 33% chance of gaining, 67% chance of 0. So it's interesting. Steve.
I find myself wondering, if I ask people what they did, I wonder what they were doing.
So they did this. So if you read the book, you find out that they did this experiment on little bits of money. They did this on big bits of money. They did this in Africa. They did this all over the place. They all come back with about the same thing. It was just a surprise. Very surprising that people would do that. So here's an Oreo cookie experiment. Everybody know about the Oreo cookie experiment? Anybody? No? So they enlisted the kids 4 to 5 years old. They had a choice between a small reward now and a larger reward later. So you could choose one cookie now, or you could wait until the experimenter comes in and says, okay, you can have 3 cookies. So the results of this experiment were the cookies were left on a plate in full view. The wait time was 1 minute. They couldn't wait. Cookies out of sight, they could wait 11 minutes. So if you're trying to change the way you eat, if you put things in front of you that are high-fat foods, you're going to eat the high-fat foods. If you don't have them in the house, you've got to go out to the grocery store to buy them. You will probably not get very many of those things in your diet. So put things in your pantry that are well stocked with nutritious, high-quality foods. So they found out kids could wait longer also if they could think of fun things to do with the rewards. So here's some long-term investigations. So they took 10 years later, they followed up on a third of the 500 participants. They found out the ones that could wait the longer times correlated to better SAT scores, less drug use, and a better career success. Fascinating. So they had one unique solution observed on the video. So they videotaped every one of these sessions. So one participant opened up each Oreo cookie, ate the center, then placed them back on the plate perfectly. Such behavior is what became of Bernie Madoff. So which would you choose? One cookie now or three later? What kind of a trader are you? So supply and demand. Everybody in economics is taught supply and demand. It's flawed, though, when you look at humans. They don't necessarily make the right decisions. Usually you think you get a higher wage, you get a greater supply of labor, right? Not necessarily. They did this experiment with New York taxi drivers. The drivers only worked until they made X dollars. Taxi drivers just figured out, okay, they could work whenever they wanted to, and they just decided, well, how do they determine the end of the day? So they found out that most drivers would go to make so much money in a day, and then they'd walk away. So busy days, they worked less. They went home to the family, took time for themselves. These are mostly younger drivers. Experienced drivers didn't do this. They realized that there was money to be made, and they were going to strike for them. The iron was hot. So supply and demand doesn't necessarily hold when we talk about humans. So then there's this dividend versus buyback stock. So humans like the idea of dividends. They like to see an income. This is just a mind game that they're playing. The brains categorize these as familiar income. You pay higher taxes. You can pay 50% per year on dividends. You get a 39% potential, 39.6% Fed and 12% state. You reduce the compounding effect, so you can't grow it as effectively. And most people do not realize the alternatives to dividends. So econs, I count myself more towards this line. I want the highest possible gain. You want capital growth. You're taxed at the capital gains rate, which is half of the 50%, so you only tax at a maximum of 25%. You only pay the tax when the stock is sold, and upon death, you reassess the stock basis so that you may never have to pay tax. I like this. So if you die, your heirs get a stepped-up basis on your stock. So you bought the stock at $10. It's now at 100. You die, your heirs get the stock with their basis adjusted to $100. They never have to pay the tax from the $10 to $100, the capital gain. So it's in essence, to me, it's in essence an insurance policy, equivalent to an insurance policy. You just never have to worry about it. Yeah, I hear you. So the bottom line is dividend paying stocks punish the shareholders. They should be saying this from every program on TV that there is. Kramer should be saying it to everybody, and he's always saying, buy dividend paying stocks, buy dividend paying stocks. It's like, oh my God, is that stupid? So here's another interesting example. You got two portfolios over the last 3 to 5 years. You take the winners, those are the best performers. They have high PE ratios. You take the losers, the worst performers, they have a low PE ratios. Over the next 3 years, performance of the market, the original winner portfolio is down 10%. The original losing portfolio is up 30%. This is the fundamentals of people have heard about the dogs of the Dow, buy the dogs of the Dow, so that the things that are not performing now, those are the ones you buy, and then you let those come up. So here's a game for everybody. The idea of the game is basically the idea of price competition in the marketplace. everybody's buying and selling and trying to figure out when to buy and when to sell, and stochastic, all these kind of things. Well, here's this rule to this game. The idea is to guess a number between 0 and 100, and your goal is to pick the number that is 2/3 of the sum of the guesses. So, if I could ask everybody just write down a little number on their sheet. I don't care what the number is. We'll just use that as a stake in the ground there. So what number would you choose between 0 and 100 such that the average sum of the guesses of all the people in this room would come up with, so like, everybody guessed 100, okay, then 2/3 of that is going to be 66, right? So that's just the idea. So you average everybody together. So here's some bidding game solutions. A first level thinker says, okay, the average is 50. So I'm going to guess 33. Right? Does anybody have any guesses they want to make? 40. Okay. You said 67? That's the 2/3. That everybody else in the room was guessing 100 in order for you to get 67 to get it correct. 17.1? So that's the idea. So that's exactly what happens. See, so one person pulls it down, and so it's a bidding award here, in effect, right? So a second level thinker considers that the first level thinkers, and so there's some dim ones in the first level thinkers, they're not as smart as the rest of them, and so they guess 2/3 of 33. So they say it's 22, right? And so then you got to the third level thinker. And this third level thinker says, okay, the other people figured out that it was 22, so I'm going to guess 15, which is 2/3 of 22, right? So what's the right answer? If you, let's say all of you guys are econs, and you guys can figure this out. What's the right answer? There is only one answer, by the way. Nobody got it, right? The only guess that a group of econs would do would be 0. Because if you go through the limit as x goes to infinity, it goes to 0. Yeah, Steve.
There's one thing that has to do with human behavior. Basically, most people have a built-in bias to the upside. So people are not going to do 50%. They're going to do 67. There's something higher than that, and that's what relevant to me.
Actually, no. So what they ended up with in the game, they when they actually ran it out, they said that they had some people that guessed 100, and they just said these guys are just screwballs, And so they had these people up at 100, but he just said we just left that data in there. But you can see how the whole thing here is to think things through all the way through problems, and to see what an econ does versus human behavior does. Human behavior is different than what just somebody looking at the numbers. Jim is talking about, looking at just the numbers. He lets his computer just run, and it works when you got the strategy running. I do the same thing.
The thing is that you can enjoy all of the stuff. While you're dying and thinking that 50-50, and walking away from it, and you really have to think about it.
Right. So you're basically reverting to an econ. This is something that is totally numerical based. There's no emotion associated with it. So option pricing, econs are the ones that came up with the models. Humans use reality, and they know the price of what that option should be. And we also have this thing called the efficient market hypothesis. The efficient market hypothesis says the market is supposed to be completely efficient. It always has the correct price. It takes all the available data. You got millions of people contributing to it. It's always going to be the correct price. Does the market overreact? Fisher Black's essay on the market noise, that he says, if you're within a factor of 2 of this, and he says that's good enough. So 90% of the markets obey this. The author said you got to be within a factor of 3. But he said the efficient market hypothesis, it was developed to make sense to econs, but reality, it doesn't work. Too much noise. The noise figure is just too high. 3 times noise. So you can pay $100, you can pay $30 for something. That's not efficient. So for example, how many people know what October 19th, 1987? Anybody know what? Exactly. That's known as Black Monday. There was no significant events that triggered that event. Friday before, the stocks fell 5%. Monday, they fell 20%. Subsequent days, Tuesday, Wednesday, and the following Monday were significantly down as well. So realize that these black swan events do happen. If you're trading options and you see a 20% deviation in the index, anything you got on the downside is just going to be crushed, absolutely crushed. So when you look at this, the prices of options are not correctly priced. They are, to my view, they are underpriced in all market situations. So for me, this is why I go long options as opposed to going short. Yeah, Mike. That's the only time I've ever heard that, but that was sort of like the flash crash. That sort of explanation is sort of like the flash crash explanation.
In this case, it was strictly market makers have to hit
Yeah, so but these black swan events do happen. Yep, I can believe it. So word of the day, apophenia. Anybody know what apophenia means? The scholars. The human tendency to perceive meaningful patterns within random data. So I created this thing you find it on the Excess Profits or 10.excessprofits website, and you'll see this thing called 10 stock market. And it is a random, totally random. I used Excel spreadsheets. I created a random stock market. The prices were totally random on it. There was no rhyme or reason. But you look at that and you can see there's support, there's resistance. There is the all these different things. Anything you can imagine is on those charts. It's like you see random. You try the human body, the human mind is designed to make meaning out of randomness. Think like this, exactly. So it's also known as the gambler's fallacy. Some gamblers think that they can beat the odds. They really can't beat the odds. The odds are there. They're just numbers. So Mark Twain said, "It ain't what you don't know that gets you into trouble. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so." So there's this concept of myopic loss aversion in investments. This is an experiment they did. They had people review portfolios regularly. So they had some people reviewing portfolios 8 times per year. Only 40% of them would put money in the stock market. They reviewed the portfolio once a year. Others would review it only once a year. They put 70% in the stock market. They didn't see the ups and downs as much. Then they had people that looked at yearly returns versus the 30-year historic returns. Seeing only the yearly returns with the associated drawdowns, only 40% only 40% invested. Seeing the 30-year return, 90% were in stocks. Alan Greenspan, the previous Federal Reserve Chairman, went to the House of Representatives and he testified, and one of the questions that Waxman asked him was, do you feel that your ideology pushed you to make decisions that you wished you had not made? Greenspan replied, yes, I found the flaw. He did not realize the difference between humans and econs. He had been educated with economic theory, but not human behavior economics. Economics training is what each of us have in high school and in college. It provides enormous insights into econ behavior, however, at the expense of losing common sense intuition about human nature and social interaction. Graduates no longer realize they live in a world populated by humans. Oops. Now forget about dividend-paying stocks and growth stocks. One of the other things they mentioned was they have dividend-paying stocks, growth stocks, and value stocks. I always thought growth stocks. I had this concept of what a growth stock was. Well, it's not the way they define growth stocks. Everybody knows what dividend-paying stocks are. Growth stocks are things that have grown and they're at their peak. They're pushing the envelope. You know, they're at the 52 high and they're still going up and that kind of thing. Those are considered growth stocks. A value stock is something that is got a P/E ratio of 10, 15, or less, and those things have value in the long run. So they have an intrinsic value and they're growing internally. Steve's going to talk about that possibly after this. And so things that have intrinsic value, Nancy Flannery, it's always, she calls herself a value girl. Karen Flannery, yeah, so she calls herself a value girl. And she's always looking for value in the marketplace. To me, that's more of what I'm looking for now. I deal with about 10 different accounts. And so I was planning on trading all of them. However, the technology isn't at a point where I can do that right now. So I have some of the portfolio that I trade regularly. The other part I am going to be looking at value stocks. And the value stocks have to be going up at about 20% per year. So these are the things that I had done in my past. I did a lot with Hewlett Packard, and that was the 20% per year is what I received on that Hewlett Packard returns over the last 30 years that I owned it, 15, 30 years that I owned it. So also my personal sensitivity to gain and loss, I really hate to lose. So I'm more than 3 to 1. I hate losers 3 times worse than I like winners. Those things just really bother me. So what it did is it changed my strategies that I'm using so that I favor breakouts. When a breakout happens, that's when it doesn't tend to draw back very far. It breaks out and it runs. And this is the thing that Larry Williams does. So if you see some of the strategies that I put on that end on excess profits, you'll see that those are breakout strategies. And I prefer those over a reversion to the mean, buy low, sell high kind of thing. I'm looking for things that break out. Hey, Jim.
I'm in the same boat you are, the thing that I worry about, and I don't know if it's ever true of you, but I have a number of different strategies. One could be based on Taylor's, and one could be based on like a breakout over moving average, and then each coming up. So I want to have different kinds of strategies. But in a certain sense, they're not different because they're all breakout strategies. I don't feel diversifying in one that's actually the numbers. Instead of having some conversion strategies. I don't know if you've ever considered
I tend to favor the breakout strategies, but I also have this thing called the Holy Grail. And the Holy Grail always makes money. I like that. The 100% probability is the thing. You just have to wait, right? And you have to find something that's sort of dawdling along sideways or going up a little bit, going down a little bit, not too bad. If it's going down real fast, you got to get out of it. But I'm working extensively with a guy in the UK to develop code using arbitrary to do the Holy Grail and basically try to make it as bulletproof as possible. And so that's my preference. I like that idea, Holy Grail, 100% gain, never lose. I like that. That fits well with my personality. So, so there's references here before the last slide here. Misbehaving by Richard Thaler. That was the book that I was just talking about. He also wrote a book called Nudge prior to the Misbehaving book, and it gives lots of examples of real-world nudges to help people do the right thing. So what's a nudge? A nudge is something where, for example, they did this experiment, it was in New York, East Coast somewhere, where they had these people, kids, going to a cafeteria, and they were putting, French fries and pop and stuff like that on the front part of the cafeteria line. Well, people were picking up the French fries and those kind of things. So this nutritionist out there said, no, let's just change this. We're going to put the salads up front, and we're going to put this in the next one, and this in the next one, and then we're going to have the desserts on a separate island. So we're going to separate the whole thing out. They found out that the people going through this line, all of a sudden, they went from nobody getting salads to 60-70% of people getting salads, and very few people getting the desserts by the time they got to the other line. It's just a nudge. It talks about nudging for finance. People were supposed to put money into 401k plan, and typically you go in there and you say you're going to elect, you got to fill out all these forms, and filling it out, all these things, and saying, okay, I'm going to give 15% of my money into the 401k plan. Well, that's 15% out of your take-home salary. So, and then of course the company gives you a 3% match or whatever. And he said that's free money, so why not use it? So what he found was that if you could nudge people in the right direction, people don't think long-term is solidly as they do short-term. If you take it out of a person's next paycheck, that's a problem. If they take it out of, they say, okay, next year you're going to get a raise, next year you're going to get a raise, another year you're going to get a raise. Well, what we'll do is we're going to take 5% out of your raise, half of your raise, and we're going to put it into the 401k. The next year we'll take half of your next raise and we're going to put it into the 401k. And he found out tremendous difference in participation. They went from like 20% participation to 95% participation in the retirement programs. Whole different way. It's just a nudge. It's just thinking the way, just trying to think of it in terms of the way people think a little bit more effectively. But the book Nudge was excellent too. Both of them are very, very good. It just gives you some ideas to think a little differently. So in conclusion, economic theory is based on the rational, on econs. Human behavior oftentimes is irrational, incapable of optimizing, and people misbehaving is what influences the market, causes a majority of the noise. Any questions? Yes? Beth. It is random to a point, right? So there's noise. So there's this concept of noise. So there's a trend. If you look at the long-term trend of the stock market, if you go to my website, there's charts on the last 50 or 100 years. The trend is definitely up. But if this is plotted on a log scale, so a small change could be a 50% or a 67% drop in the value. It doesn't look like much when you look at a large scale. But if you look at it on a real live scale, that's huge. You got the 2000 debacle. You got the 2008 debacle, right? You got these huge, huge deviations. So there's this noise level on the thing. So what I do is I work off of noise. The stochastic tends to have a very good way of pulling out the noise. If you look at the stochastic, it tends to be nicely rounded, smooth, and kind of stuff. The Holy Grail is designed to basically just play the noise. If somebody wants to sell me something cheaper, okay, I buy it. And then it goes up and I sell it. And I just keep on playing in the noise. That's all that it's doing is just playing the noise with those two. So realize what noise is, make money off the noise, or if you want to do like what I was looking for now is value stocks that they got some noise in them, but they're long term, they're going to going up at 20, 30% per year. Jim.
I just wanted to make a little comment on the concept of like the value stock that we're talking about, and the value of the Dow. The value of the Dow is related to PE ratio. Now, before I got into strategy trading, there was a lot of talking about that investing. The first seminar that I went to, using everything now in Barcelona, did this talk, that commented the following concept that if it's not the PE ratio by itself that moves anything. It's the stock's growth rate divided by the PE ratio. So even higher PE ratios, if they have really stellar growth rates, are better buys than low PE ratio. Low PE ratio with a low growth stock is going to remain a good stock. Now, maybe not in the long term, but at least it's sort of
Typically is, yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Once we got to come out, very many subjects were comparison, and they do the pricing comparisons and sales value and policy. The last year, the value stock has done interesting.
Right.
Relationship to growth stock. So that's,
They don't always work, right? So the key is, but over long term, so I'm trying to find something that I can hold for 20 years. So, well, like Jim said.
So what we're talking about primarily is how long it's going to be, longer to do, what time frame do you use?
So the trading I'm doing is as short as a day, within a day. But then the longer term stuff, I have all these other accounts that I want to be able to put in value funds that I would just like to hold for the next 20, 30 years, or that I would like to pass on to my kids. But, you know, like, okay, if they inherit it, it's going to be whatever the value is going to be at that time. But value seems to be the biggest play that I've seen so far. But value does go up and down.
Yeah, and that's something that we make on a quarterly basis.
Yeah.
Like, working on a quarterly basis.
Yeah. Did you have industrials training? Okay. So industrials training, I was going to go through some of that if we had some time at the end of this thing, and we'll talk about that, because they actually grade all these different things all on one sheet. So you see you can search for the individual stocks, you can see the values, and play those. Yes. Pretty much, yeah. Yeah. No. So it's based on the stochastic, and the stochastic it usually tells me when to kick in. Yeah. Those tend to be growth stocks. And so when they get hit really, really bad. If you look at the price of Netflix over history, you see these dramatic hits. Oh my God. They're 3, 4 to 1. I mean, that's a huge, huge hit. So it tends to not play those. So Hewlett Packard for 20 years or so was this nice little, kept on marching up and marching up. So the standard error about the mean is very, very small. So, any other? Yeah. Yeah. If the stock goes to zero, it loses. If the stock goes to lose, if anything goes to zero, options, for example, tend to go to zero. Most of them go to zero. 66% of them go to zero. So if you trade options with the Holy Grail, which I do, but I trade it very selectively. So as long as there's value at the end, I make money. I make money on it. It works on anything, but you have to be a little cautious when you use options. Go back to I gave a presentation a while back on on Holy Grail. I said it was called Introduction to Holy Grail. Yeah. I'm trading a good portion of my portfolio with it, yeah. So I'm doing okay. It only returns about 40% a year on the typical value so it's not what? Yeah, well, it's a little better. Yeah. So, but I mean, it's not like something you can get on options. You can get 50 or 100% a day, right? And so when I trade options, what? Almost every day. On trading, when you look at trading SPY options, you can do it almost every day. What? Yeah. 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 So when you get high volatility, I made some presentations before. When you see high volatility all of a sudden happen, you just make tons of money real fast, and then it backs it out. You close out all your positions, so you end up with a huge gain really fast. Right. So if decays, if it's going to zero too fast, that will indeed go. That'll go south on you. If it tends to go to zero, you don't want to trade the Holy Grail. But for most stocks, it's not an issue. SPY is not an issue. Any last questions? Okay. Thank you very much.